And coincidentally, the tea drinkers, who include Senator Boni Khalwale, are our neighbors. So God knew that we would plant tea and get a good market in our neighbors who normally take tea, Mr. Speaker, after every meal. I wish and pray in my opening remarks, we should be like Brazilians, Mr. Speaker. I had courtesy of this house when I was the chairman of JLAC in the other life. I did lead my delegation of Governor Senator James Orengo, Governor Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., former Senator of Kisumu, Fred Outa. There were a number of us. We did visit, Mr. Speaker, and a team of defense and foreign relations then. And we learned one thing in Brazil, Mr. Speaker, apart from the other beautiful things in Brazil, apart from the wonderful weather, good food, Mr. Speaker, wonderful people, of course. I don't want to go into details because I might be called out of order. We learn, Mr. Speaker, I don't know why, for the first time, Senator Crystal Asike is shouting across the aisle. Mr. Speaker, we learn one ingredient with the Brazilians, or consulting across the aisle. Mr. Speaker, we learn one of the ingredient thing with Brazilians. Brazilians, Mr. Speaker, do their own thing, Mr. Speaker, with one heart. But out of curiosity, in the many meetings, Mr. Speaker, because we had gone to investigate the issue of Brumadinho collapse in state of Minas Gerais, in one of the states in Brazil, and even went to other states like Rio de Janeiro, among other states, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you are smiling shyly. I don't know whether you have been in Brazil and you know those places. So we visited, Mr. Speaker, a number of places, and we learned one of the things, Mr. Speaker, that in their meetings there is no water like this. Their meetings is only coffee. I want to propose in this country, is there a way when we go to our meetings, our engagements, a sufuria, not a sufuria, a flask of tea? And I know, Mr. Speaker, after this, I might, Mr. Speaker, after this, because every meeting we need to go, including our committees, there should be a way of having a cup of tea, a flask of tea, a biriga of tea, Mr. Speaker, in every meeting, Mr. Speaker. And I know, after saying this, I'll be very popular in Western Kenya. And I know the people will read my popularity, Senator Boni Khalwale, Mr. Speaker. Because at least them, after every, they must take tea. After every, they give tea. After eating, Mr. Speaker, and many others, Mr. Speaker. So I think in our culture, we should encourage tea taking. And I heard, Mr. Speaker, Senator, we have given us our beautiful Senator, Senator Gloria Oruoba, one of the fiery senators, said something about aluta. Mr. Speaker, the only way to finish drinking of alcohol in this country is to encourage people to take tea. If there is an option of drinking, let them drink tea. And that's the only way we can fight aluta, which is common in this city and other cities, where young people go to clubs from Friday and come out on Monday morning, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the only way to finish aluta in the city, I know there was a statement by Senator Nyamu, was talking about aluta, where young people from tomorrow disappear in quotes up to Monday. They should be encouraged to take tea. That is the gospel we should be preaching. If we take more tea as a country, we don't need to depend on other exports. Because I know the biggest danger that has become a serious challenge, Mr. Speaker, is, and I want even Senator Asike, is an artist, is a musician. And the other day, Mr. Speaker, a number of us attended a launch somewhere along Gong Road. I don't want to mention the place. And me, Mr. Speaker, I was disappointed there was no tea. Other things were there. And Mr. Speaker, I know I should have tagged you along because maybe you would have guided how we could proceed. But to my unfortunate, I would have expected Senator Crystal Asike and the organizers, Mr. Speaker, with a lot of indulgence, to at least ensure there is tea, as among other drinks, Mr. Speaker. But I ended up taking water the whole evening. Mr. Speaker, I know I would have strained Nairobi Water and Sanitation Company because I was taking a lot of water, Mr. Speaker. and therefore it was not very, but I hope next time. So artists, like, we need to encourage people to take tea. That is my gospel, Mr. Speaker. Even before you take something else, can you take tea? That is the secret I ran with Brazilians. That their own market of only taking coffee is so huge and humongous that they don't need to do other exports, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, under this Tea Amendment Bill of 2023, I want to support Senator Cherargei. I know, Mr. Speaker, that Nandi was Ngishu, not Nandi, Bomet and Kericho, Mr. Speaker, and Nandi produced, this is called a Tea Amendment Bill 2023, produced, and I want members to listen to this. Let me give you statistics, Mr. Speaker. Nandi, Kericho, and Bomet produce 46% of the tea in this country. Why? Because we still have huge tracts of land. We still have many opportunities, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, if you go to Kiambu and other counties, because of population intensity, even in Kisii, Nyamira, where they are planting tea, Mr. Speaker, because of the land pressure, it's only Nandi, Bomet, and Kericho who have, Mr. Speaker, 46% of the production of tea in the country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and it is 2% of the GDP of the country, gross domestic product, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, that is why some of us have been pushing, Mr. Speaker, for complete construction of Kalenjin Strip in Kericho so that they can be able to directly fly their tea outside the country, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we have been insisting that Kalenjin Strip must be completed so that people can export that. Unfortunately, as we talk, Kalenjin Strip as at now, it's already flooded because it's yet to be completed and does not allow our farmers of tea from Kericho, from Nandi and Bomet to export direct. For us, Nandi, Eldoret International Airport is a bit near, we can export directly. But for Bomet and Kericho, at least Kalenjin Strip would be a good place where they can be able to export those tea. But it is incomplete, it's flooded. Nowadays, Mr. Speaker, on social media, people call it Kalenjin International, Lake International Airstrip. It is a misnomer that is being used, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say we need also to diversify the imports of tea, like Pakistan, Mr. Speaker. Pakistan is the biggest importer of tea in Kenya. What should we do? We need to diversify. When Hamas and Palestine are having a problem, what is the way forward? We have Iran, other countries like the Kenyan tea. Mr. Speaker, if you have to travel across the world, you can always know that the Kenyan tea is the best because it has unique taste, because of good climatic conditions, good soil conditions, Mr. Speaker, and I think it is very important. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of, because I wanted just to raise on a few issues, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that counties, I remember the county of Bomet, led by my brother governor, Professor Hilary Parchok, at some point went even to travel to Iran and wanted to do direct sales of tea. I remember it was in the previous session, Mr. Speaker. Professor Parchok and county government of Bomet did try to sell their tea direct sales to Iran. But because of many obstacles and cartels, Mr. Speaker, in this town and in the ministry, and other cartels, I'm told the people call cartels, the Bomet County government could not do direct sales on behalf of the farmers. I'm happy this amendment is talking about direct sales. And you just need to register, Mr. Speaker. Even on the sales of tea proceeds, Mr. Speaker. So we are going to do either sell by auction or by direct sales, Mr. Speaker. And if whichever either is the highest, then the farmers or the factories, tea factories can go with it, Mr. Speaker. So this is a blessing to counties like Bomet who had started initiative. I think I had Meru, although I'm not sure, they wanted to do direct sales also. Kericho, the same thing. Of course, in Nandi will do. If this direct sales is encouraged, Mr. Speaker, the county governments of these regions, since 46% of tea products come from these Bomet, Kericho, and Nandi, we will be very keen, Mr. Speaker, to ensure. So this, Mr. Speaker, on the direct sales of tea, we support this amendment, Mr. Speaker, because it will assist farmers. Because even Clause 36B says, the proceeds from the sale of tea, whether through auction or through direct sale, shall be deposited in a direct settlement system, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, these are tea proceeds that going into the future, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, and tea growers, I'm happy. There is one of the, tea to us is everything. Where I come from, especially Nandi sub-county, cross majorly tea, it has many multinationals and private outgrowers. I think there is one, I'm forgetting, led by one Mr. Cherargei, that they have even, I think, 1 or 2 factories, one in Kaptumo and one in around Cheptabach within Nandils. And in fact, the president, when he was the deputy president, went and opened their building in Nandils town. Mr. Speaker, many people in that area depend on tea. When you go to Aldai also, almost virtually the entire of Aldai is tea growing area, Mr. Speaker, sir. When you go to Masop, where I neighbor, even Chisumei, my own constituency, cross tea. Even Mgwen, where they have established a new factory. Even in Sangalo, they have private investors have come, they have established Bogovale tea factory. When you go to Tinret, also a number of tea factories, even Nandils. So, Mr. Speaker, virtually us in Nandi, we grow tea almost everywhere. And therefore, tea is life in where I come from, Mr. Speaker. It is a sustainability of livelihoods, and I'm happy. And I want to thank the President, Dr. William Ruto, because under the fertilizer subsidy program, at least all farmers, maize, tea, sugarcane, coffee, and any other farmers will get subsidized fertilizer at 2,500 across not only Nandi, but across the region, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to thank President because the genius of subsidizing production over consumption will assist us in elevating the cost of living in this country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, on the issue of to protect on the mismanagement, I agree with the tea growers, Mr. Speaker. There are small older farmers that need protection. You know, there are big farmers, of course, a number of factories, Mr. Speaker, but there is always a sad underlying with the issue of tea. Especially, Mr. Speaker, you saw the expose by BBC where sexual exploitation was rampant. And you know, it was hue and cry when BBC did an expose. I hope with time, Mr. Speaker, this, and I want to challenge senators who are here, especially in Labour Committee, to cease, and Senator Crystal, Senator Mbugua was here, who are members of Labour, please follow up on the expose of sexual exploitation at tea farms. And it was well elaborated, Mr. Speaker. It was a sad, no one has given us way forward on whether perpetrators of sexual exploitation in tea farms have been arrested. Up to today, after that expose, Mr. Speaker. It's sad reality. Because even as we fight the issue of HIV and AIDS across the country, and even we talk state, we must protect women and young girls who have been taking advantage, and even young boys and men, Mr. Speaker. I'm told even men, we are not safe, and even young boys are not safe. It is a societal issue, Mr. Speaker, that we need to speak about it. And I think the Labour Committee kindly pick up and follow up on the issue of exploitation, of sexual exploitation in tea farms, especially after that expose. And multinational companies must take their internal mechanisms to protect also their laborers and workers, Mr. Speaker. Number 2, this region of Nandi, Bomet, Kericho, there is a soft underbelly of land historical injustices. And unfortunately, most of the tea farms owned by multinationals have allegations of having most of their lands that were forcibly taken from our forefathers. And therefore, when you go to some areas like Kapchanga, areas like Nandi Hills, Cherondo, Kapchorba Ward, a number of areas like here, Chepkunyuk, Kapchuria, among other areas in Nandil sub-county and Nandil's constituency, Mr. Speaker, you find people who are living in dilapidated conditions on the hills because the prime land, the multinationals took it and planted tea. Mr. Speaker, if the issue of land historical injustice in multinational companies is addressed, we must ensure that as we address, we don't also give that, we make sure a way of sustaining that land. What I'm proposing is not that the land be taken away and be subdivided to build houses. That land can be reverted to the community. Let the community continue taking care of the tea. Then they can still sustain themselves So the issue of land historical injustice in Nandi and, Mr. Speaker, on the tea farms, even in Kericho. I was there when we went to listen to a petition in the last session. Even in Bomet, I have similar challenges of land historical injustices. We must sit and agree Mr. Speaker, you saw the other day, and I think it came to the floor of the House, and you were presiding that day, when we talk about mechanization of tea farms. I wish and I want to call Senator, the sponsor of the bill, to put something on amendment during third reading, because we need to agree how far can we mechanize tea farms. The more we continue mechanizing tea farms, Mr. Speaker, we continue losing labor for the young people, Mr. Speaker. As we talk, there are young people, after an incident lapse here, Brook in Kericho. Most young people were taken to court, they were arrested after incident of burning houses and what have you, Mr. Speaker. Is that the solution to such? We need to agree, Mr. Speaker, should we mechanize 40% and 60% to normal labor? Should we mechanize 20% and 80% to labor, so that we balance? Where will these young people go if they cannot go and pluck tea in Nandi, Kericho, and Bomet? And it is unfortunate that the multinationals have taken a hard stand, Mr. Speaker. Many young people around Brook area, in Inamoy, here in Kericho, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately are suffering the consequences of what they didn't know. I know what happened might not be condoned because it is not what we expect. But can we agree, and I want Labour to take the lead, that's what the majority leader was saying here. Let Labour give us pragmatic. Go to these tea farms and ask them, where is the International Labour Organization charter that says, Mr. Speaker, 40% to mechanize, 60% to our young people, so that we can address, Mr. Speaker. And I hope the multinationals that are listening from me who have moved to court to be complainants in most of the young people that were arrested in Kericho, so they should, at least for the benefit and unity of the community, should withdraw those cases so that we can move together at one people, one nation. Finally, on the issue of tea levy, it is important, I agree, let us have tea levy. Mr. Speaker, I agree, it will allow price stabilization, because, Mr. Speaker, during bonus, farmers tell me in my sub-counties in Nandi, why is Meru getting higher bonuses than Nandi? Why is Mount Kenya getting more bonuses than Kericho or Bomet? So, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that this tea levy will be a stabilizing fund. Mr. Speaker, will allow stabilization of prices. Mr. Speaker, another issue on this tea levy is Tea Research Foundation. This will allow extension. Mr. Speaker, we are seeing introduction of purple tea. We hope this purple tea will gain market. And when we do research, which is a good tea to grow? The normal tea, green tea, we have now purple tea. Mr. Speaker, is it good? Is it valuable? Does it fetch better prices? These are what we want tea levy fund to do more research, give extension services, ensure that we plant tea that is commensurate with the soil type, Mr. Speaker. Another, Mr. Speaker, finally, is on infrastructural development. You know, Mr. Speaker, when I speak about tea, I get emotional because it is the livelihood of my people, Mr. Speaker. I feel I am now in my real element, Mr. Speaker. And finally, on the infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say this in Nandi, and I've said in Nandi, and I've told County Assembly of Nandi, and I want other counties. This cess money that is given for infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, this cess money, why don't they form local communities, Mr. Speaker, and give the cess money to remain with the tea factories, with the local community to maintain roads? Mr. Speaker, roads in Nandi, where tea is grown, is in pathetic condition. Because that money of cess has been given to county government, they go and mislead or do other things, like even buying other things. Mr. Speaker, I pray that you had me 1 minute so that I finish only on the cess, just a minute. Just 30 seconds, Mr. Speaker, so that I finish that one. On the issue of cess, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, on the issue of cess, I noticed the change. On the issue of cess, Mr. Speaker, is, Madam Speaker, is we should give it to communities and factories so that they can maintain roads.
Okay, finish it.
Okay. Can I have the mic? I know the weekend is nearer. No, Mr. Speaker, that the cess money be given to factories and form local communities that will be in charge of roads so that it is easy to maintain those roads, Mr. Speaker. What we